Hi folks, I wanted to make a quick video showing the Allen Heath QU-5. I suggest a lot of churches install this mixer, and if you're seeing this video, I've probably suggested your church installs this mixer. I wanted to make a quick video for people who have been running sound on some other mixer, probably an analog mixer, maybe some other digital mixer. I just want to show you how this mixer is laid out so that when you finally arrive and get your hands on this thing, you're not lost, right? You know where things are. So let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so you'll notice immediately that just like many mixers that you've worked with in the past, there's 16 channels on this mixer. Now, before we go any farther, let me show you that this mixer actually can control more than 16 inputs. If you have an analog mixer, there's 16 XLR jacks in the back or 1/4-inch plugs in the back, and they correspond to the channel connected to them. In the case of this mixer, there are still 16 XLR ports in the back of the mixer, but there are a variety of ways you can connect a lot more things to this mixer. And so if you want to see more channels, they're organized in layers. So look here, input 1, pastor soloist, and I'm gonna press this layers button and look at the next layer, and you can see it just shows you the next items that are available. There's a USB input this church doesn't use, stereo inputs, effects returns, there's a lot of stuff in here. So that's all available. Now, if your church is not in the habit of using much more than 16 inputs, then you can obviously just ignore that and just always stay on layer A. The next thing I want to show you is, let's look at this first channel strip. IP1, that's input 1. You can change these names. Well, I'll show you that here in a second. Input 1 is connected to this microphone right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you have a mute button, right? You have a select button. That's going to be important later. And then you have a solo button. Allen Heath calls that a PAFL. And what that does is it puts this one input in your headphones so you can listen to just this one thing in your headphones. And I think it puts it on this meter over here. So that's handy to know. The select button I told you is very important because select is what tells you what channel you're adjusting in all the stuff that's hidden inside these menus, right? So the things that in an analog mixer are hidden are not hidden. They're just knobs in the row in the channel. All of that stuff is inside of this touchscreen now. So we've selected input 1. We could select pastor. I'll click a few just so you can see it changing, right? Select this, and in here you have your input stuff like your gain knob and phantom power, a few things like that. Then you also have your EQ is over here. You've got a much more advanced EQ than on a normal mixer. And you also have an RTA so that you can see the sound, which is sometimes helpful, especially when you're trying to sort out feedback. So you've got this much more robust EQ. You also have compressors built in. So every input can have its own compressor, which is really helpful in making the whole band, the whole mix, your instruments and your choir, whatever, sound a lot more cohesive. It's helpful in regulating volume, a ton of stuff. Compressors are great, and having one on every input is one of the best arguments for moving to a digital mixer. You can also have a noise gate if you are in the habit of using noise gates or you want one. Those are occasionally helpful. And what else is in here? Insert, you can set up other more complicated things. You can also do a few other things that are a lot less useful. They're useful in certain situations. Okay, so that's how you program all this stuff. You can do a lot of that over here with the knobs as well. Whatever you've selected, these knobs are going to affect. If you just like getting your hands on knobs, a lot of that stuff is also available in knobs. Yeah, so let me review. So on input 1, you need, if you want to adjust the compressor or the EQ or things, you select the channel, and then you make sure the touchscreen is on processing. There's a few other screens you could look at, but you want to look at processing. Okay, let me quickly show you how auxiliary mixes work. On an analog mixer, you have these knobs all the way across that can create separate mixes, but they're small knobs. They're kind of hard to interact with. On this digital mixer, you have a much easier way to handle that. You have a series of mixes over here. In fact, I think this one will do 12, well, total of 13. And if you want to see the other mixes, you just press these buttons over here. So this church has a floor monitor for the pianist, and this is that mix. They have another monitor for the choir, which is, oh, they might not use. And then here's the mix for the live stream, right? All of that stuff, it's just that easy just to see the mix, and then you can adjust things. You know, maybe you're listening to, left, right is generally the main speakers in your sanctuary. And then one of the other mixes you'll know is your live stream mix. Okay, so now we're looking at the live stream mix, and maybe you click over here, you're listening to the live stream, you realize, oh, the piano's way too loud, so you need to dial it back or whatever, right? And then you just go back to left, right, that's your main mix. That's what controls the speakers in your sanctuary, right? So that's how auxiliary mixes work. Let me explain to you how you can save your settings. On a digital mixer, you can save the settings of literally every single thing in the entire mixer. And that's helpful because I think you should be in the habit of saving your scene. That's what they call it. That's what Allen Heath calls it, a scene. You want to save your scene every few weeks on good Sundays. When the mix is good and everything's great, you want to save that periodically. As you can see that this church is done. You can see number one there says 10/30/25 Sunday, 11/14/25, right? They save their scenes because that's going to save you one day when you come in, and I'm sure you've had this experience if you've been running sound for very long. You come in and you can't figure out what is wrong. You must have, or someone turned a knob or something somewhere, and for the life of you, you just can't figure out what went wrong. On a digital mixer, in that situation, you say, whatever, I don't know how to fix this. Let me just go back to settings that I know worked 2 weeks ago when everything was great. And you know, 11/14/25, go. This will recall the scene, yes. And it just resets everything to how it was on, well, apparently 11/14/25. So that's called scenes. So let me I'll give you a quick introduction to how to do this. Let's, here, I'm gonna save here in slot 7. I'm gonna slot 7. I'm gonna say store new. You know, this is at the end of Sunday. I want to save my settings. So I go 7. Looks like it's empty. It's a great place. Store new. And then I can change the name of it if I need to. I'm gonna call it delete this, but you will have a more useful name. Apply. Cool. 7 is saved as delete this. And then, and now it's saved. Did I had a typo? It doesn't matter. Okay. Now, so then let's imagine it's a few weeks later and you want to come in and everything's terrible and you just want to go back to something you know worked. To recall a scene, you select the scene, you highlight it, and you press go. Go, and then it's going to ask you to verify. You really want to do that? Yes, I do. Thank you. So that's how scenes work. I'm going to show you effects. They're right here. You have 1, 2, 3, I think there's 4 effects units. I'll be honest, I almost never use these. I mostly work in churches that already are very acoustically live spaces, and so adding extra reverb is not usually very helpful, but that's where it is if you need that. Let me show you now how to organize your inputs and your outputs. Earlier in this video, I pointed out that a channel does not necessarily have to control the specific input jack in the back of the mixer that's in line with it, right? Input 1 doesn't actually have to control the jack back here labeled 1. Input 2, that they've called pastor, doesn't necessarily have to control XLR input 2, right? You can change all of that stuff. That's particularly helpful if y'all have a stage box. Let me take a second to explain what this is. So you might be familiar with an audio snake. That's those big fat cables with a box on the end, and you put the box on stage, and then you can plug a lot of things into it. And it's basically an extension cord for, 16 microphone cables. The way you can actually still do that if you already have one, but a lot of churches are moving to this stage box. And what this stage box does is kind of the same idea, except instead of having a big fat cable, because it's all digital, there's only one network cable, like a Cat5 cable. And so then the question becomes, which channel on here controls the inputs up there? So in this particular church, some of these are connected directly to the XLR jack in the back. Some of the wireless microphones are set up that way. But a lot of the other inputs are set up for their stage box. So you can see here what we've called rack 1, rack 2, rack 3, rack 4. Those are actually inputs 1 through 8. We did it all the way through 8 on the stage box. And you can set that up. I'm probably going to set a lot of that up for you. Anyway, this is the menu where you do that. It's the I/O menu. There's one more thing I should show you, and it's that you can set up users for your mixer. Now, you probably have different levels of audio volunteers and staff at your church. Some people who kind of know what they're doing, and some folks who know less what they're doing. So you can create a different user, like this church has created multiple users. One they call administrator. Administrator can do anything. Administrator has a password. They also have a different user called volunteer, and volunteer can do a lot fewer things, which is great because it gives them fewer things to screw up, right? So that's one of the ways that this mixer, a digital mixer, becomes a lot easier to use because you can set things up for volunteers, and that's the default login. People log in as a volunteer, and then they can only do certain things that you've pre-decided. Okay. If you want to create new users, let me show you how to do that. That's in setup. Yeah, it's in setup, users, and then you create things in this menu here. Volunteer, you go into setup and what controls and perimeters and things they have access to. Setup. So when you turn this mixer on, I won't do it now because it's connected to a sequencer, but when you turn this mixer on, it will ask you what user you are. Okay. All right. I hope that this has been helpful in wrapping your head around how the QU5 operates and how it's going to benefit your church.